Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the universe. Today we're going to be learning from tips from the table, wherever you are in the universe. Today we're going to be, today let me just play again, we're learning and I am without my producer today because she is enjoying herself at a wine and balloon festival. So I'm so excited for her. However, I'm missing her desperately. So let's go ahead and do tips from the table, shall we? Here's my handy dandy blank canvas. And I'm going to show you how to create, or I'm going to show you, sorry, what filbert brushes are all about. What are they and why do you need one? Last week I talked about a flat brush and the benefits of a flat brush. And here you see the reason this is different, or the differences between this one and a filbert. It has a square edge, and a filbert has a rounded hairs. Number one difference. Number two, what is it that why do you need one of these and what can you do with this? Well, there's plenty that you can do with this. First off, let's say, for instance, you have, or you are painting grapes or blueberries, just a round object of sorts, right? And flat brushes can cause a problem because they are flat and will go out of your lines. So you'd have to pick a smaller flat brush to get around those areas. However, with a round brush, you can, and they obviously come in different sizes like flat brushes do. You can take that nice rounded edge, use it to your advantage, and base coating, again, base coating is filling in an area with complete color, correct? Correct. And, whoops. And I'm going to do that, load my brush up, and go ahead and start filling in that area. And because it's rounded, it makes a nice round base coat. You don't have to worry about your edges. If you're doing hollyberry, grapes, apples, oranges, anything in the round family, rounded edge family. I also want to talk about the difference between, terminology, the difference between a description of a technique and the actual technique. I word that correctly. We talk about shading and highlighting. Highlighting is just a term to reference something that is lighter in value, and shading is to identify something darker in value. How you create or apply your highlights in your shades are what I taught last week when I said you can side load, you can float, you can pre-wet, do back-to-back, bullseyes. Those are the techniques you use to achieve highlights and shades. Okay? So, that being said, let's move on. Here's a nice round circle. And when it's dry, I would put a second application because I'm not sure you can see, but it's not very solid. You can see the background through it. So I would do a second application. See if I can get this closer. Okay. Let's see. I want to see if anyone has any questions at any time. Please feel free to post them in the comments, and I will get back to you at the end of the show if I can't answer your questions during the day, during this broadcast. Next thing I want to do is show you that if you're doing flowers, I'll put another coat on this. If you're doing a flower that, say a daisy, or you could be doing geraniums, you could be doing just about almost any flower, because you got hydrangeas, geraniums, cone flowers, lazy Susans, black-eyed Susans, things like that. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of flowers that you could be doing. And in that, this brush would benefit you greatly. So let's pretend we're going to do a daisy. If you put that brush down, you can lift up, and it's a little bit of a twist. You can put the brush down, lift up, and twist. So what I'm doing is I'm starting broad, and then I'm twisting to a chisel. Remember the term from last week, broad to chisel. Turn it around, broad to chisel, broad to chisel. I don't turn left as well as I do right. If you have a straight on, hold on a second. I'm going to go broad to chisel. And then when you're in the bottom of our daisies, we tend to just go flat like this and make our daisies. If you wanted to do a hydrangea, you would do clusters. You can keep them with a flat edge like so if you want. I do 4 petals to each blossom, and then I'd fill in the middle. I'd come over and I'd add another one, and I might only see 2 of those petals. I might come over here and add another one and only see 3 of those petals. But I would build my cluster on these types of strokes. And then I would go back and I would add so see how I'm starting to build the hydrangeas? So hello, Cynthia. So that's what this is. Just building your cluster on your hydrangeas by adding these strokes flat on with a filbert brush. Let's see, the next thing I want to show you why you should have a filbert in your toolkit, because that's what it is, right? These are tools for the painter. So the next thing I want to show would be how to do a highlight. Now, yes, you can side load and you can multi-load, pre-wet, all those things I showed last week with the flat brush. You can do that with the filbert brush. Let's try and put a highlight on this. I'm going to pre-wet. It's always best to pre-wet in this case. And I'm going to add a little smidgen of white as a side load. So it's still, let's see if I can focus here on this. You see how it's still on half the brush? It's not on all the brush, it's only on half the brush. So I'm going to come over here and on that pre-wet area, put the paint in the middle. And remember that bullseye I talked about last week? Flip the brush over, that or twist your piece around, whatever works for you. And then with the paint, always touching that center dot that you've created, whether you put it on there in pencil or you just vision it in your head, and you can add that highlight, that bullseye highlight. Let's do a shade. Shading, again, side load, and this time you're going to take the brush, load only half of it, work it out on your palette like I showed you yesterday, and you're going to come in and just side load that bottom. And see how easy it is to do that with this filbert brush. It really is making your life a lot easier to do that with this filbert brush in a round area. Say you want to do leaves. Say this daisy's on the stem and you want to create leaves. How easy it is to create a leaf with this filbert brush. I'm going to go and put out a little bit of green. Load your brush from the outside of the puddle like I showed you last week. Place the brush down on the broad, and then as you lift up and twist, you can make a pretty leaf. That can also be a flower petal if you put it in a cluster. So put that down, I flatten it out, I do a wiggle, 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 and then I twist and pull. And when I say wiggle, 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 I'm not rocking the brush. I'm wiggle, 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 okay? So put it down, wiggle, 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 splay those hairs out, lift and twist. See how easy that is? And it gives us a nice rounded base and a nice point on top. Can you do it with a flat brush? Sure you can, but what's going to happen with your flat brush, and I will show you the difference. I would load my flat brush same way, but you start on a 45-degree angle to your surface. You flatten out and lift off, and you definitely have a distinct point on both ends. So if you know, depending on the look you're looking for, the rounded end is very, very nice. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is a blended background and how to create a blended background and the difference between using a flat brush and a filbert brush. Here is, and I'll back off on that, is one of my pieces. See how soft the transition is between the blue and the neutral color and back to a white sand color. It's that blended, the blended background is just meaning you're changing your values or your colors very softly. So if I want to do a blended background, and I'll turn my piece over, and I'll start with some of this peachy color. And I do mostly crisscross, 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 crisscross. Then if I want to lighten it, pick up some of the white and crisscross that in this way. And then it starts to fade. See how that fades? I'll wash my brush out and then pick up some darker value and start at the bottom, and I'll fade that up. Now, if I lose the ability to blend because it dried, just quickly wash your brush out and pick up some of that neutral color, start back there and blend it down. And you can go back and forth. and see how soft that creates that blended background. I would try and do it with more X's, an X stroke than a back and forth like I did, because you don't want any linear lines necessarily, but I'm working in a small area. But you can see how the white softened the peach into the full strength peach softened into the darker color. And that's why you should have a filbert brush in your toolkit at all times. Let's see, any questions on the filbert, or someone use the filbert in a different manner and want to share with us? That would be more than welcome. I am always eager to learn, and I learn a lot from my students. I learn a lot from my contemporaries, and I think that it's a wonderful thing. If you enjoy Tips from the Table and you'd like to see me continue the series on Bubbler Media, you can post your comments, as well as please consider supporting us on Patreon. There's a Patreon account from Bubbler Media with that would help us to continue these contentful programs for you. Let's see what else I can do with. I love these filberts. There are such things like comma strokes. You can do them with a filbert brush if you want. There's people do them with filberts, and they do them with rounds. We haven't talked about round brushes yet, but we will. But these are comma strokes. They make great borders. You can make great borders with them. I am not a comma stroke expert, but I can get by. So you can do borders like that. And those are similar to what you can use for on your daisies. A daisy stroke, if you ever hear anyone mention a daisy stroke, and I know that times have come along where you don't necessarily see or hear much about stroke work anymore, but a daisy stroke is when you place it flat down and you come, it's like 12 o'clock straight on, whereas the comma strokes are curved. And they take a lot of practice, but you can do them. You can multi-load a brush if you wanted to do a one-stroke kind of idea. I am not a one-stroke artist, and I cannot seem to bring myself to load the brush as much as they load it, but I do have the ability to load my brush with one color, tip it in another. I'm going to tip it in white, and then I'm going to place my brush down, and if you see, it has, and I'll put that up close for you. And I don't know if you can see, it's got the white tip in it. Let me do it with the darker color, and maybe that'll show up better. Load my brush, tip it. So what I say tip it, what it is I have all the brushes in the peach color, but just one side of it's tipped in an opposing color, complementary color. Put that brush down. I can wiggle, 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 twist. And now you can actually see how that looks. And it brought some of the color down with it. So I can, this is putting the color down. This one is the second color's up. This is the second color's down. So it kind of shines through underneath it. So see how that works? And you can do the leaves that way as well. You can tip the brush and do leaves as well. So we did a base coat. We did a bullseye. We did just a side load. We did daisies, hydrangea. So this is flat twist. This is just sit down and lift off, sit down and lift off. If you wanted to put little centers in there, You can do the same. You can do it flat, or you can do both sides and it becomes round. So one way is like that. Another way is putting it down and bringing it up and making like a circle. I showed you leaves. If you wanted to use this and you didn't have a liner and you wanted to use a chisel of this, you can use a chisel to do a stem, just like you can with the flat. I showed you a daisy stroke and a comma stroke and double loading and a blended background, which is on this side. So there you have it. Thank you for joining me on Tips from the Table. I appreciate that you're here and joining me for Tips from the Table. Next week, we'll be talking about angle brushes, and I'll show you the reason, why you should have one of those in your toolkit. And every week from, until I've gone through most of the brushes, I will be showing you about them. I also will share with you some techniques, and eventually I will be introducing different products and how to use the different products. So until next week, I hope my bestie producer, Melissa Reyes, is having a good time away, but I do miss you and can't wait for you to get back. See you next week, 1:30 p.m. on Bubbler Media. Please go to our website and go to our Patreon account, and also like our Facebook and check off notifications so you always know when I'm going live with Tips from the Table. But Sundays at 1:30, Paint with Heart will be at 3 o'clock Eastern. And take care and enjoy Tips from the Table. Bye.